Hi, welcome back. So after you're done playing with your recipe, then I believe it's time we sort of break down what's going on and think of a simpler example like a hello world to break down all of the things that are happening into a recipe. So I went ahead and deleted all of the steps from this recipe. You can do that by, if you have a step, you can click on the little trash icon, and once you click that, then that's gone. That's deleted. Don't be afraid. You can always go back into your dashboard, into catalog, and you can, click on use this template again. So don't be afraid to delete all of this. It's not gone forever. It's in the catalog if you ever want to go look into that later on. All right, cool. So we have deleted all of the steps. And I want to go through, I want to sort of break down what's going on into all of the components of Buildable, right? So our trigger step, as we have said previously, the trigger step basically is what's going to happen first as soon as you hit the endpoint, right? And the trigger step will sort of determine what you want to send into the recipe. So you're going to map out all of the information that you're going to need to send into this recipe, right? So in my case, because what we're going to do is create a very basic, sorry about that, hello world example. What we're going to do is we're going to just send in here name, and that's going to be Alfredo. Okay, and that's looking good. And as you see, what we have here is the endpoint URL of this recipe. You can just copy that, and if you use Postman like me, if you're a fan of Postman, you can copy that and then do an HTTP request to the recipe and see what we get from it. Okay, so you can also lay out all of the parameters that this recipe will need to receive in this here, in this table, I mean, and you can actually include validation types into all of the inputs that you want to provide into the recipe. So let's do that. Let's add a new name property in here, and let's select that this needs to be a string and that it's not optional, right? Cool. So just once again, I want to emphasize that in here, what you're doing is you're providing an example of the payload that the recipe needs to receive. So this is just an example that you will need whenever you run the test for your recipe. And in here, what you're doing is, if you want to look at it that way, I know that I do, is sort of creating the interface for whatever information your recipe is going to receive, right? So we have what we want. We have our name. Cool. So what we can do now is, of course, and this is going to be a very simple recipe, right? As soon as you add a new step, and to do that, let me go back. To do that, if you hover over the trigger step and you click on the plus button, that's going to add a new step for you. You have a lot of building blocks to choose from. So you have conditionals, functions, response, requests, services, loops, then you have the integrations. It's a bit overwhelming at first, so let's look at what each one of them do. The first that we're going to want to look at is the response building block, and it does exactly what you imagine. It sends back a response. So you're basically getting an input from the trigger step, and your response step should be the last step into your recipe. So this is going to be a pretty short recipe, right? And what we want to do in here, right? So what you can do in here is you can map out the code that you want to give back from this response. So if it's okay, if it went badly, so you want to send I don't know, an error or something, or not found, you can do that in here, and you can configure this in here as well. All right, so let's add a value. Let's add a body to our response. So I want to introduce you to a very awesome concept that's inside of Buildable, and you're going to be using this a lot. You see here where it says add a spread value, right? So if you click into add spread value, that's going to add an underscore spread underscore. And you can sort of imagine spreading as very much how you imagine spreading in JavaScript, right? So if you have an object and you spread that object into another object with the 3 dots operator, right? With the spread operator, that's basically what you're doing in here. You're spreading whatever value you're getting from here, right? So if you click on the caret icon, what you can see from the different steps that you have here, right? I want to select trigger, and what this is gonna do is, as you can see, trigger is an object. So what this is gonna do is it will spread that for me, and it will send me back all of the values that are inside of spread, right? So, all right, let's test this. So all of the tests run successfully. As we can see, we've sent. So here you have your input, the recipe's input. So we have sent Alfredo, right? And on the next step, we have received Alfredo, right? So it's a very basic, I send you something, you give me that back, right? So let's test that on Postman. I'm gonna go ahead and click on copy to copy the URL. So let's get the URL, and this is gonna be, I want it to be a post because I want to send a body. That's gonna be raw JSON, and let's send a name. So this is gonna be autocomplete. All right, cool. Alfredo, and I should get back Alfredo. Wait, here's a pretty interesting thing that I need to mention. You see how we have authorization token is invalid? This is pretty cool because now I'm going to introduce you to a concept which is really nice inside of Buildable. That's because in our trigger step, as you can see, we have switched on authentication required. So what that's going to do is, in order to get this recipe from a client side, you need to have an authentication token. So you need to be authorized, right, to fetch this. We're going to turn this off for now, but when we see how we can achieve authentication with Buildable, which is pretty easy, it's amazing how easy it is to have credential-based authentication. You're going to see how if you turn this on, then your recipe is going to be protected, and you're only going to be able to consume it if you are logged in. So if we go into Postman now and we send this, then I should get back Alfredo. All right, awesome, cool. So that is your first recipe, and that is basically what response does.